Oh, hi. I'm Chris from Airwindows. That's an angle you don't usually see from me. Hi there. I have a variety of things to talk about today, and a new plugin. And the new plugin is for basically one person. They asked me for a particular thing, and I was able to do it, and so I thought I might as well. However, I've also got new music of a sort, and I'm trying to figure out ways where I can get online, do my streaming, and maybe work with that stuff a little bit more, kind of like I used to do before things got all difficult. So for that reason, I've got cameras set up for being able to watch the music stuff being made there, and I have a close-up of the technology that I use to make this stuff on, which is NerdSeek. I kind of stepped away from the trying to make the synthesizers improvise their own music, and now I'm using that disk over there, the chord charts and things, and writing stuff. So without any further ado, I have a new plugin, and the new plugin is called LRFlipTimer, and it sounds kind of like, well, this is the new music I was talking about. Now, I'm probably going to try to do other stuff too, but this is what I was working towards, is being able to get the system working so that I can do this mixing of it in the box using the newest version of console. So I'm using the newest version of console. I'm using the newest reverb that I've got. None of this is what I'm using in the hardware world, and you might not be able to tell what the thing is. So here, let's actually, that's too annoying. You see what it did? This is called LRFlipTimer. And if I tell everything to go all the way over to the right, LRFlipTimer has just flipped it so that it's all on the left. Now this is kind of like, let me put the kick back in the center. This is kind of like a thing that people do sometimes in visual arts. The idea is that you should flip your canvas left to right, and then you'll see things that are out of balance. Now, I'm not sure how useful that is on a mix, but you know, it was possible to do. So it's like, there it goes again. You select how many minutes you want it to go, and what's going to happen is it's going to swap the channels. It'll swap them fairly smoothly, but it's not doing it in an especially clean way. But once it's one way or the other, it's a straight data pass-through of whatever is coming in. So it's a completely transparent plugin while it's not flipping. And the reason I did it that way is to encourage you, hopefully, to not be trying to do it like, well, like take this off of your bus before you do a mixdown. Nobody wants their channel to whoop in the middle of their final mixdown. You should make it go away once you're finished doing your experimenting. But it is one way of going, if you do have stuff on one side or the other, or here, what I can do is, and there it goes again. Put some of this back to be a little bit more normal. And if you have something like this, and you're used to setting stuff up panned in various ways, or maybe you've got stuff panned in the middle or something. You got your hats over here. You've got this sustaining thing sitting over there. And the ARP sits over here. Well, what's going to happen is, while you're using this plugin, it's going to periodically, like I said, this is 1 minute, but it could be as many as 10 minutes, flip the channels. It'll flip it smoothly enough that it's not going to make any pops or clicks. And all of a sudden, your tracks are going to be inverted left to right, kind of like that. So the idea is, does that still sound correct to you? And that's kind of how that works. Like you can see, I can cut it in and out while it's not doing anything. And there's no sound change because there's no sound change. It's literally copying the data words from the input to the output, or reversing the sides and cutting them from the input to the output. And yeah, what we've got here is my 5-hour live stream the other day. It was drawing a little bit from some of the weird stuff I was doing with the synthesizer imagining its own music streams that I did. And that's not how I'm going to be doing it going forwards. I'm working on, like I said, going to something like this, where, here, let me bring back OBS. I'm going to be trying to do this stuff with a view where you can see what I'm doing, but also this view where you can see what the NerdSeek is doing. And anything that I do here, you can kind of work out how to do in Renoise or something else to that effect. I think it's useful. I think this is a handy little tool. And of course, here, let me take a moment to ask that to be quiet and go away for a moment. So my hope is that this is going to be interesting for me to do my composing streams and stuff, and I'll actually be doing music more than I have in recent months, because it got a little annoying always constantly using that one track with the guitars and things, and then trying to do another track and having it be basically kind of terrible. I threw it out. So I'm going to try to change things up, and that involves me doing a little more streaming than I've been doing. And for now, I've got LRFlipTimer, which flips the left and the right on a timer. And you might not find that useful, but somebody asked me for it, so somebody wants it. I got a lot of other things in the pipeline. For instance, I'm going to try to do a digital model of this. This is called a Delisle pentatone. It's like the Gibson special notch filter in some of their guitars. It's got a choke and it's got some capacitors, and I put one in my Ibanez. That red guitar is an Ibanez, and this one's going in the Franken Les Paul that I've got going on. But first I recorded it so I can try to do a plugin of it. I can try to do a notch plugin that matches what this does. So if you were trying to do that on a DI guitar thing, well, it might not be exactly as close as the real deal, but I can at least model what that does. And I've also got another experiment in mind, which is, this is a Weber transformer that is for driving reverb tanks. And my hope is, in the recording of that stuff, I was tracking things through my mixing desk and into the Motu. It's a Motu 16A. You can also get Motu 8A, which is small and tidy and still gives you 8 inputs. And that's probably about as much as I'd need to do the specific recording I'm doing, because all I need to do is grab a bunch of tracks at once and then be able to do at least 3 for drums with drum mics, because my drum mic situation is fairly simple. So what I'm thinking is getting a bunch of these guys and working out whether I can make the Eurorack stuff balanced by driving this transformer with that, and then using the output rather than driving a speaker or a reverb tank. I'll use the output to drive the balanced inputs of the Motu. Because what I'm looking for is ways of getting sound comparable to what I can get out of the mixing board that I'm using, which has some scratchy qualities here. I'm moving the controls and I'm not as loud, but this scratchy noise is unfortunately my expensive real-world analog mixing board. So I'm not happy about that. I wouldn't mind getting a digital mixing system that doesn't do that, so I can just bypass it. But there's a bunch of really juicy transformers in the analog mixing board, so I'm going to see whether I can get cheaper transformers to do reasonably comparable things with the sound of what I'm working with. And lastly, as you know, there is an ongoing problem with my stuff working on Big Sur with M1 Macs, because I don't have one of those. I got suckered into Apple's stuff and ended up getting a very fancy iMac Pro a while back, which is now a little bit behind the times. And I'm not actually running Big Sur on it because all my plugins don't work in Big Sur, so that's a good reason for me not to do it while I figure this stuff out. I have an earlier iMac that is set up with Big Sur, and it's got the most recent Xcode, and I don't know if I can make it compile to a architecture that it's not on, but right now I can't get my plugins to compile on that machine at all. Otherwise, you would already be seeing information about me coming out with this new bug fix, update, all that kind of stuff. So I've asked for help in a couple of different places, and I've been asked for help by some people I can't tell you about, not because they're Apple, but because I get the occasional marquee client, and sometimes I don't even know they exist. And then sometimes I hear something from them because they need something from me. So, very fancy person whose music I really enjoy asked me for help getting my plugins to run on the M1 Mac on Big Sur, and I wasn't able to do anything about it. But I tell you what, I'm going to keep working on it, and that person will be the first to know once I make any real progress. In the meantime, I'll just be updating the occasional plugins. Like this one, the LRFlipTimer, is probably not exciting for people, but there's some stuff I can follow up on, and my real work is going to be getting more comfortable with live streaming, because people would like me to be doing some of that too, and not just only coding live streaming, but also, like, I've been asked to play video games that I've written on a live stream. Unfortunately, the only video games I've written are Counterpart and Cluster Fluff. And Counterpart is more complicated. It was built in Unity, but it's the worst thing to stream imaginable. It looks terrible on the internet, so I don't really want to do it. I could also jump into Minecraft and stream that and talk to people, but really what I'm trying to do is get more comfortable with composing stuff like this track that I just played that you haven't heard before, and just getting up to speed, because that's using all the stuff that I talk about. That's using all the stuff that I've invented as far as theory type things are concerned. And it needs to all start coming together and becoming something. Because if I can work in the studio, I can work with tools that I can then open source or help people build, and then you can do the same things. And even if you don't, you can hang out with me while I do it. We'll see. I'm doing the best that I can with all of this. Honestly, the problems with M1 and Big Sur are a big pain, and they've got me kind of down. So I'm hoping I can make some progress, even if it does involve, as it probably will, a huge amount of extra work on my part for every single plugin. Not every new plugin, I'm going to have to go over every single plugin I've got and adapt it to this new format. But if I can, I will. But it won't be this coming week because I'm going to be digging myself out of more snowstorms, and I have a load of firewood coming in, and I have to bring all of that in myself and stack it. Because I don't have anybody to do that, because I'm just Chris from Airwindows, and I have to carry my own firewood and shovel my own snow and all that kind of stuff. But hey, yeah, my car's back on the road. It's starting to get, well, no, it's not really starting to get warmer, but I'm doing music streams again, and hopefully we'll all get through all of this and it'll be good. So for me, my studio and my crazy modular synthesizer that made the music that you heard, I will bid you a good evening. Oh yeah, all of this is funded by Patreon, which has been running for a goodly number of years. I have some ideas in mind, such as, remember how I came up with this, and I was like, I'm going to try to make transformers go into my Motu more effectively. Really what I have in mind is working out how to solder up synthesizers a lot like this stuff. But you should be able to build it because often the chips that those things run on, like for instance, you can see the dope for clock divider over the side, silver colored thing. You can make a clock divider, maybe not that exact one. Actually, you probably could make that exact one. You can make a clock divider with a 25-cent CMOS chip. You can also make a clock divider with a $1 tiny, literally AT-tiny 85 chip, which is the same thing that the Bastel Castel runs two of those inside itself, and it has its own little software. There's lots of other kind of software you can use. There's a little programmer. I now have 10 of those little programmers. I intend to give 9 of them away and keep one. And I have a big pile of those AT-Tinies because in the quantities I can buy these things for, they cost $1. So I'd like to see people building stuff. I'm going to see to it that people are able to build stuff and make their own crazy synthesizers, kind of like this pile of stuff. But it's going to look a lot cheesier, but you'll be able to afford it, which is not always the case with Eurorack. And I'm going to still be making the plugins because everybody can afford that. I'm supported by Patreon. Download the stuff and use it. Hope you like it. On that note, I'll see some of you folks tomorrow on Monday. Monday being my coding stream. That's also when the firewood gets delivered, so you might see a coding stream that is interrupted by enormous crashing noise as a cord of firewood gets dumped in my driveway. If that happens while I'm streaming, I'm going to leave the stream up and try to set it up in such a way that you can hear the enormous crash it makes, because it's great. It's a great noise. The firewood goes thundering down onto the driveway, and then the truck pulls forwards, and as it finishes dropping the last of the firewood, the huge heavy steel door on the back of the dump truck comes loose, swings forward, and slams against the metal body of the truck with an enormous crash. You will definitely hear that. It will probably blow your earphones up if I have a mic going and I'm streaming. But that's tomorrow, and then I also have to carry all the firewood tomorrow, and yuck. That's tomorrow, and the rest of the week is carrying firewood and more snow shoveling. But I will work on the Big Sur / M1 thing. It might actually mean me buying maybe a Mac Mini or a laptop or something to do that in. But the sticking point is really me being able to compile the plugins, because I've already tried. You'd better believe I've already tried. And I can open up the projects, but they don't do anything because everything about how to compile stuff is different in this new version of Xcode. And I'm going to need to be walked through it, and I need to confirm that you can still build generic interface plugins in this new version of Xcode of any kind. I don't care if I have to get somebody to help me do it, but any kind, and that those do work in the new version of Logic and on Big Sur rather than this just being a generic thing where all generic plugins die. Because if that's true, that's a deal breaker. I can't work with that. The stuff that I build doesn't run its own interface, and it should be possible to supply plugins that aren't generating their own graphics and have it running. Like if you can run 1,000 space designers in modern M1 Macs and that kind of nonsense, you can run several cajillion Airwindows plugins. You can make them the mix as complicated as you could possibly imagine if I can get this stuff to compile. So we shall see. Sadly, it's not going to be the next week, but I'm actively working on all of this stuff. It's got me kind of down. I'm feeling kind of pressured about it, but I'm going to see what I can do with it all. And I'll talk to y'all later. Bye-bye.